For the last 12 weeks, the Detroit Lions sort of had it on cruise control, but last night against the Buffalo Bills, they ran into a series of problems that once again reared their ugly heads. We're going to talk about it, so stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. It doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike. And as always, we're diving on in. My friends, I'm going to let you know this right now. I could have made an episode last night. I could have had the live stream last night. But there were two main reasons why I decided not to. One, as I said during my live stream, I had to, kind of put all this stuff together for today's shows, pardon me. But at the same time, I didn't want to make something last night because of the fact that I knew that if I sat down and I thought about it, my viewpoint was going to slightly change. I knew that if I sat down and I really started to think through some things, I was going to change my opinion a little bit. And true to my form, I did. Because if I'd have simply gone into last night, I would have just primarily blamed one individual mostly. But realistically, for a game like last night, you can't just blame one individual. And I hate using the word blame like as if, that's the reason why we lost. Obviously, when you lose a game, there's multiple reasons why you lose. It's not just solely one particular thing. But unfortunately, there's no really other good word in the English language to use. But I will say this. I have absolutely no issues whatsoever with the effort, with the heart, the grit, the passion that our players played with. Our players played their asses off. They refused to quit. I mean, you got to think about it. That was a game where at the end of the first quarter, we were down 14-0, and through everything that transpired over the course of that game, we quite literally came back to almost win it because we were only down by 6. Now, having said that, as my title, pretty much puts out there, the main reason that I believe we lost was because we got outcoached and because our defense absolutely finally reached its point of implosion. Because let's talk about the first part of this, which for me starts with the defense. That part about last night I'm not going to change. Our defense quite literally imploded on itself. Now, I understand 100% that Aaron Glenn has had a lot of pieces missing this year. And I understand, and I, trust me, give him all the kudos in the world of the absolutely fantastic job that he has done with this defense in spite of losing those pieces. However, though, and I'm trying to make sure I word this the right way, just because you've done a good job up until this point, as much as I would love to give you a pat on the back, as much as I would like to say, hey man, you've been doing great, the problem is that ain't nobody going to give a damn about what we have done the 13 weeks prior to this. Ain't nobody going to care. Because all anybody's going to care about is the current here and now moment. I can talk about all day long about how, up until this, we were 12-1, we done this, we done that. All anybody's going to care about is what did you do last night. All anybody's going to care about is what are you going to do in the future. That's the name of the game. That's the name of the business. Nobody gives one rat's patoot about what you did the previous 12, 13, 14 weeks to this. All they care about is what do you do in the moment with what you have. And again, I understand that sounds cruel. I understand that sounds unfair. But unfortunately, that's the way the game plays. Everybody can say all they want about how, oh, well, you know what? David, you're just being too hard on Aaron Glenn again because he didn't have what he needed. I already knew he didn't have what he needed. We've known he hasn't had what he needed for a long time. For crying out loud, how many guys have we lost over the period of how many ever weeks? We don't have Hutch. We don't have Kaminsky. We don't have Anzalone. We don't have freaking, Rakestraw. We don't have Melifonwu. And now last night we just lost, freaking McNeil and freaking, Carlton Davis potentially for the rest of the year. You don't have to tell me about how we don't have the pieces. I know we don't have the pieces. But it's irrelevant. Again, as much as I hate to say it, nobody in the NFL is going to care if you're missing pieces. All they're going to care about is, did you find a way to win? That's all anybody cares about, is at the end of the day, did you put a W in the win column or did you put an L in the losing column? That's all anybody cares about. Ain't nobody going to care about how many players you had in or out. Nobody's going to care. Because, let's call for what it is. Every team at this point has got injuries. Now, granted, the Lions have more injuries on defense than any other team. But again, like I said, nobody's going to care about that. All they're going to care about is, did you win or not? Again, it's cruel, it's unfair, I understand it. But that's the name of the game. So again, I'm trying to put it into the context that it is to say, hey, yes, our defense imploded. A lot of it had to do with the fact that our defense did not have our pieces out there. But regardless of whether our defense had the pieces or not, we still had to find a way to win. Now, having said that, what I will say about this is that regardless of how the defensive players tried their best, because I don't want to hear anything about how our players didn't try. They sure as hell tried. They were out there, they were doing the best they could. They were out there making hits. They were also, playing with energy, because I know some people thought that in the beginning of the game they weren't playing with energy. As far as I'm concerned, it wasn't because of a lack of energy. It wasn't because of a lack of a motivation. Realistically, what it comes down to for me, this is where I do hold Glenn in responsibility. This is where I do hold Glenn in some contempt, because this is the same thing we have seen from him before, time and time again. And it's one of the most frustrating aspects of Glenn's coaching style. He is stubborn. And again, you can argue with me all you want. You can say I'm backtracking. I'm not backtracking. I have given Glenn more praise than I ever have. And there's a reason why I said what I said in my previous episode. I was wrong about Aaron Glenn as far as what I said back a couple of years ago. But you cannot tell me that last night Glenn refused to make changes when it was absolutely imperative he made changes. I mean, I'm just going to ask this simple question to everybody that watches this video. Who in the Thunder last night remembers hearing these constant phrases by Tony Romo? Oh, yep, they're going to make sure that they're going to use that pulling tackle to do that run play again. Every time I heard that, it was because the freaking Bills ran that same concept, whether it was left or right, and they would gash us for freaking 7, 10, 15 yards. Or, how about this little number? Oh, hey, the Lions are constantly running in man defense, and freaking Josh Allen is just picking us apart. Heard that literally the whole night. I mean, for crying out loud, those were at least two of the most prominent phrases I kept hearing out of Tony Romo's mouth. And if it wasn't that, it was about how, Lions have got to make sure they keep Josh Allen in the pocket. They've got to make sure they keep him contained. And every single time I heard that, it was when freaking Josh Allen was either bootlegging to the left or to the right, escaping the pocket up the middle, whatever the case was. And you want to know why I bring all that up? Is because this is the same kind of stuff we have heard in different phrases, in different concepts, in different, games about when Glenn does not do certain things. Because think about it. If Tony Romo, from up in the damn booth, could recognize that the only style of defense we were running was man concept defenses, and very seldom ran any zone, but yet we got gashed by freaking Josh Allen because of that, just a quick question here. Don't you think that at that point, maybe you might be better off doing a little bit more of a zone concept just to see if it might work? I'm not saying just completely change everything up, but at that point, it's like, hey, What could it possibly hurt to just start maybe changing things up a little bit just to see if it might potentially get a better result? But yet Glenn didn't do that. Glenn stuck to the freaking man defense the whole damn night. And I'm going to tell you this. By the time you get to 40 points, you ought to realize the defense ain't working. You might want to change it up. Just saying. But the other thing about Glenn, that to this day, I'm telling you this right now, ain't nobody going to be able to argue with this one on me because Glenn himself has said this. You have a mobile quarterback in Josh Allen. You know he's mobile. You know he runs. You know he can be able to pick up first downs. He did it several times last night. Hell, the last time he did it, he freaking ran up the middle and picked up like 20, 25 yards on a quarterback keep. This is where I come in with the same thing we've heard from Glenn in the past. And I quote, he said, I will never have a quarterback spy in my defense. The moment you say something like that, you know for a fact that everybody's going to start keying in on that one. And when you have a team that has a mobile quarterback, like a Josh Allen, like a Lamar Jackson, like a Justin Fields, you ought to know for a fact that that offense is going to take that and use that against you. And that is exactly what we saw last night. The Bills used Josh Allen's mobility to the absolute furthest extent they could, and we had no answer for it. Absolutely freaking none. We couldn't keep Josh Allen contained in the pocket. We couldn't find any way to stop him from running up the freaking, up the field, even when it was a design quarterback play. Because there were a couple of times that it was a design quarterback keep, and Josh Allen just freaking went for a nice solid gain. That right there is a coaching problem. That right there is a schematic problem. That right there is Glenn not either, one, adapting and changing his scheme, or two, not having his defense prepared. Whichever way you want to call it, I don't give a damn. But it's the truth. One way or the other, Glenn did not do his job last night. When you give up 48 points in a game, you have not done your job. It is that damn simple. Now, the one other thing I will say about the defense that I'm going to say somewhat reflects on Glenn, but it also reflects on the player, is the lack of discipline. I don't know how many times I must have said it last night. It must have been at least 2 or 3, but I'll say it now and I'll say it like I did last night. I love Brian Branch. I love him. He is a great player. He is a physical safety. He is a smart safety, and he also has the ability to be a ball hawk. But my God, last night, that guy could not stop jacking his jaw, getting into the face of, I think it was Keon Coleman or whoever the Thunder it was. And it's like, dude, I don't know what the Thunder Brian Branch was doing last night, but it was so apparent there was a lack of discipline on his part. Because the reason why that was bugging me so much is like, dude, any other freaking referee crew would have probably instantaneously thrown a flag for unsportsmanlike conduct because they would have called it taunting. And it's like, listen, Brian Branch, you are lucky that you did not get called at least 2 or 3 times for that. Because there were at least 2 or 3 times where he was constantly getting up into people's faces and he just would not let stuff go. There were times where the freaking Lions, players had to pull him off and be like, listen, dude, knock it off. You're going to get us a penalty. That right there is the kind of stuff that drives coaches crazy because it's like, dude, now you're getting into an area of just pure sheer stupidity because you just won't shut up. And like I said, I love Brian Branch, but that is not the time to start doing that. This is a big game. The last thing you can do is let your emotions get the better of you. Don't let your mouth do the talking. Let your play on the field do the talking. That's how you shut up people, not your mouth. All that's going to do is make other people start talking. So that's the defensive side of things, which, again, that was where I was going to spend a good time of this episode on. But I'm telling you this right now. It's not just the defense. It's not just Glenn. It's also the head coach. It's also Dan Campbell. And I'm, again, much like I said with Brian Branch, I love Dan Campbell. I really do. But I'm telling you this right now. This is the same kind of stuff that we have talked about as Lions, fans since day one with him. You live and you die by his gambles. That's why they call him Campbell's gambles, because when it happens, you are clearly taking a gamble and it has a 50-50 chance of backfiring on you. But last night, it wasn't no 50-50 chance. It was almost a dead set guarantee it was not going to work. And everybody knows exactly what I'm talking about. I'm talking about that onside kick decision with 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter. I'm sorry, but to me, that was the wrong decision at that time. I can understand why he made the decision, but it was the wrong decision all the same. Here's the reason why I can understand why he made the decision. It goes just back to what I was talking about with the defense. When you make a decision to go for an onside kick with 12 minutes left in the game, that right there tells me you've lost all confidence in your defense. That's exactly what that tells me, because it's like you are telling the defense that I do not think you're going to be able to hold up and get the ball back so that way we can have a chance to score again. Because at that point, if you kick the ball the full length of the field, you are taking the chance that the Bills will be able to milk the clock for all it's worth, and you're not going to get the ball back, or you're going to get the ball back with limited time. But unfortunately, that's kind of the risk you have to take, because it's like if you give the ball to the Bills with a very shortened field, which you go back to that play, that's exactly what we did, and it was a lot shorter of a field than what we were hoping for. That's why I can say I can understand the logic, but the result that we got was absolutely terrible. Again, it's one of those things where you have to weigh the cost effect. Do you want to risk giving the ball to Josh Allen with the full length of the field to potentially, milk the clock dry, or do you want to risk giving it to him on a shortened field for him to get another touchdown again? If you're talking about it from those perspectives, I would still much rather hope and pray that maybe our defense will get a stop, maybe we might get a turnover, rather than just, kind of, for lack of a better term, just kind of giving the fact that, hey, you know what, we already know you're going to score anyway, you're just going to have it right now, and you're going to score within less than a minute. To me, that almost kind of shows that you've almost kind of accepted defeat, and you're just trying anything you can to potentially get the ball back as quickly as possible. So for me, it's like, again, I understand the logic, but it's just like, it bugs me. I just don't like the decision one way or the other. And it's one of those decisions, it doesn't matter what you do, you're kind of not going to like it. Unless somehow, some way, by a miracle, you were able to get that onside kick, which is like almost impossible now. But the point of the matter is that coaching is ultimately what I think screwed us over in this game. We can talk about injuries, and yeah, that definitely screwed us over too. But the coaching is what I think did the most for it, because we were not mentally ready on defense for that game. We were not mentally ready to react. We were not mentally ready to be prepared. We were not mentally ready to play against the Bills and what they had potentially for us. And it showed. The defense had no answers for virtually the majority of the night until later in the game when we started getting some stops. But even then, by that time, it was way too late. So, to wrap this whole thing up, here's what I am going to say. Like I said, I understand that Glenn had a lot of players missing. I understand, there were a lot of guys on that game field that were not exactly our starters. There were guys that were backups or backups of backups. And I understand everybody's going to want to use that as a reason not to have Glenn get, absolutely massacred. But I'm going to say this right now. I don't want to hear anything about that. You want to know why? Because this is a better defense than what we had against the Green Bay Packers a week and a half ago, and we were able to beat the Green Bay Packers. Because, remind me, go back to that game against the Green Bay Packers. We didn't have Ali McNeil for about half of the game. We didn't have Levi Onwuzurike. We didn't have Josh Pascal. And we didn't have DJ Reader. At least for this game, we had 3 of those guys all the way through the game, even though we lost McNeil halfway through it. And yes, we also lost Carlton Davis. But still, we found a way to win with that defense against Green Bay. Still a playoff team. Is it as good as Bills? No. But we still found a way to win. And on top of that, we had extra time to prepare for the Bills. We had a week and a half to prepare, to take a look at their game film, to see what they were going to do, to understand what was our best strategy to beat them. And on top of that, I'm going to say this. No one, like I said, nobody gives a rat's patoot about us being injured. You have to get the players to play. You have to get the job done. Again, I understand it sounds unfair. I understand it sounds cruel. But the point of the matter is, that's what cost us last night. That is what cost us. We were out-coached because Aaron Glenn didn't either want to change his defense or did not have our players prepared on defense, and because Dan Campbell, true to form, he gambled, and we lost big time because of it. But anyway, folks, I've said my piece on this. Like I said, I wanted to take the time to think through it a little bit more, less impassioned with, my emotion, but to still look at it and present the facts as I saw it. I know some people are not going to agree with me. That's totally fine. But that's the way I see it. Having said that, I'll end the episode and say thank you all for watching in another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these 3 things: like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, please, I highly encourage y'all to make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that way you guys never miss any more content I push out. Also want to encourage y'all, please, to share the content with your Lions friends and family members. Share here on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook. Share wherever you possibly can, because the more we can do it, the greater the channel can grow and spread. And with that being said, I hope everybody is having themselves a great day. I understand the loss happened last night and it sucks, but again, don't let that be something that takes away your happiness, take away your joy. Make sure you still have something in your life that makes you happy and makes you smile. And whether this is the first time you're watching me or this is the upteenth time you're watching me, I hope you all got something out of it. I hope you all enjoyed the content. With that being said, God bless, my friends, and until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.